Chapter 25. The Space of Love. After the sale of the first print of the book about Anastasia, I received a royalty payment. I went to the VDNK, now known as the All-Russian Exhibition Center. For some reason, I always enjoyed being there. This time I walked past the multitude of snack bars and shashlik buffets, tempting me with their delicious aromas, and fought against my inclination to buy all the delicacies in sight. Even though I had money in my pocket, and a fair amount at that, I decided I would now spend it more wisely. And all at once, another incredible thing happened. It wasn't loud, but unmistakably and distinctly I heard Anastasia's voice. "Buy yourself something to eat, Vladimir. Buy whatever you like. You do not have to skimp on food anymore." I kept walking a few steps past the open snack bars, and again the voice came. "Why are you walking on past? Please have something to eat, Vladimir." Come on now, I'm having hallucinations, I thought. I walked over to a bench alongside a broad pathway, where there was hardly anyone else around. I sat down and whispered quietly, bending over so people wouldn't think I was talking to myself. "Anastasia, am I really hearing your voice?" And I heard the answer distinct and clear. "You are hearing my voice, Vladimir." "Hello, Anastasia. Why didn't you talk to me earlier? So many questions have been piling up, questions people have been asking at readers' gatherings, including a lot I can't answer." "I have been talking to you. I have been trying all this time to talk with you, but you have not been hearing me. Once, when you decided to do away with yourself, I even cried out. I was so worried, but to no avail. You did not hear me. I figured out that I needed to do, and started singing. It was this song that the two girls picked up and played on their violins at the metro station. They heard it and started playing. As soon as you recognized the same melody you had heard me sing in the taiga, you remembered me. I was so worried at the time, I thought my milk was going to give out." "What milk, Anastasia?" "My breast milk, the milk for our son. After all, I did bear him, Vladimir." "Did bear? Anastasia, was it hard? How are you doing there all alone in the taiga? How is he? You told me, I remember your saying, it wouldn't be at the right time." "Everything is fine. Nature awakened early and is now helping me. And now our son is fine. He is a strong lad. He is already smiling. Only his skin is a little dry, just like yours. But that is nothing. It will pass. Everything will be fine. You shall see. It is more difficult for you now than for us. But take one more step. Finish the writing. I know how hard it has been for you, and it will not be so easy in the future either. But keep going on your own path." "But Anastasia," I wanted to tell her that writing a book is harder than running a business. I wanted to tell her about how things stood with my family in the firm, about the ups and downs of the past year, about how I no longer have a home and a family, and almost ended up in a loony bin. I wanted to give her a good talking to about those dreams of hers, so she wouldn't aim too high with them, wouldn't keep on tempting people. But then I thought, why upset a nursing mother? Her milk might indeed turn bad. And so I said, "Don't you worry about trifles, Anastasia. I don't have any particular difficulties at the moment. What's the fuss? I've written a book, and it was easier than drawing up a business plan. When you draw up a business plan, there are a lot of different factors you have to foresee in advance. But here you simply sit down and describe what's already happened. Just as in the jokes about Chukchi, I sing what I see. And besides, you know something, Anastasia? Those dreams of yours, which I thought were sheer fantasy, they're starting to come true. It's incredible, but they are coming true. Look, the book is finished. You dreamt about it, and now it exists. People are really reading it enthusiastically. The Moscow papers are already writing about it. Readers are writing poetry about it, about nature, about Russia. I found the picture we talked about in the archives of the Trinity Sergev Monastery. The picture has been preserved. It's entitled The One and Only by a Single Line. I shall publish it. And can you imagine? The bards. You remember telling me about the bards?" "Yes, I remember, Vladimir. Surprising as it is, this too is starting to come about. I was at one readers' conference where I was approached by this chap with dark blonde hair. He handed me an audio cassette and said, in terse, military fashion, Songs for Anastasia. Please accept. The journalists, readers, and 2 of the staff of the Moscow Research Center, Alexander Solntsev and Alexander Sakotsky, who had come to the conference, they all listened in silence to the tape. Later, a number of people began making copies of it. They made copies and at the same time tried to track down the man who had given it to me, whose looks, apart from his dark blonde hair and short stature, didn't have much to say for themselves. He had appeared, it seemed, out of nowhere, and disappeared just as mysteriously. He turned out to be a submarine officer from St. Petersburg, a scientist by the name of Alexander Korotsky. Later he told me how the submarine he was on managed to rise to the surface after an accident, how he had been confidently led by a series of coincidences in connection with this cassette, led to hand it to me. Not only that, but Korotinsky turned out to be a bard as well, and his song, Cram, the church, contains whole phrases which you said to me. Remember these? For example, believe not others' words, once said, they're gone as wind. Many will see the church, but few will enter in. Our life may be a race, from floor to floor we're thrown, but everyone must face the choice he's made his own. Besides, Korotinsky doesn't really have a singing voice. He practically recites when he sings. But that very fact goes to prove what you said about the power of the word connected to the soul by invisible threads. Korotinsky, the bard, is a living example. For all the bright joy you have been giving to people, for the purification of souls, I thank you, bard, I thank you, said Anastasia. Just think, another officer, I mused. Gruzia, who first printed the book, he was an officer. And the homeless colonel who drew the picture for it. And then there was a pilot, a regimental commander who's been helping me sell the books. And now the first one to bring me songs turns out to be an officer? What is it about your ray that seems to set officers' hearts afire in particular? Do you shine your ray on them more than others? Many have been touched by my ray, Vladimir, but it sparks aspirations only when there is something there to set aflame. Your dream, Anastasia, is indeed turning more and more into reality. People are grasping hold of it. They understand it. The homeless colonel understood. He was a chance acquaintance. Pity he's gone. I saw him lying dead there. His face was still smeared with dirt, but he was smiling. Dead, but still smiling. Did you do something there with your ray? What does that mean when someone dies with a smile on their face? That man was with you. He is now with the bard, treading the invisible pathway. His smile is saving many hearts from bullets more terrible than the leaden ones. Your dream, Anastasia, is entering upon our world, and it really seems as though our world is beginning to change. There are certain people who feel and understand you. They show evidence of new strength coming from somewhere, and that is changing the world. The world is becoming just a little better. But you, Anastasia, there you are as before, in the taiga, in your glade. I would not be able to live in such conditions, and you would not be able to live in our world. What, then, is the point of your love? Your love is meaningless, and I still do not understand my relationship to you. But what's the point, since it's so clear we can never be together? Never close. We are together, Vladimir. Close. Together? Where are you? When people love each other, they strive to be always close to each other, to embrace and caress each other. You're too different. You don't need that. I do need it, just like everyone else, and I am making it happen. But how? Right now, for example, can you not feel the gentle touch of the breeze, feel its caressing embrace, and the warm touch of the sun's glistening rays on your face? Can you not hear the birds singing so cheerfully and the leaves rustling on the tree that you are sitting under? Listen, it's a most unusual rustling. But that, everything you just mentioned, that's for everyone. In any case, are you responsible for all that? Love dissolved in space for one can touch the hearts of many. Why dissolve love in space? So that close to a loved one there will always be a space of love. This is the essence of love. This is its designated purpose. It's all pretty confusing to me. And your voice, before I never heard anything at a distance, but now I do? Why? Chapter 26. Anastasia's grandfather. I looked about me. There was Anastasia's grandfather, standing right close to the bench, using his walking stick to push a piece of litter someone had thoughtlessly tossed on the grass toward a rubbish bin. I jumped up. We shook hands. His kindly eyes were sparkling with cheer, and he talked in simple terms, not like his father. When I saw Anastasia's great-grandfather back in the taiga, he hardly had said a word, and his eyes kept staring into space as though they were looking right through you. Grandfather and I sat down on the bench, and I asked him, "How did you get here? How did you find me?" "It wasn't much of a problem getting here and finding you with Anastasia's help." She's really something, eh? She's had a child. She said she would have one, and she did, alone, out there in the taiga, not in any hospital. It must have been painful for her. Did she cry out?" "Now, why would you think it was painful for her?" "Well, women, when they give birth, it's painful. Some of them even die during childbirth." "It's painful only when a child is conceived in sin, as a result of fleshy lusts. Women pay for this with pain in childbirth and torments afterward in life. If the conception takes place with higher aspirations, the pain only intensifies the feeling of great joy of creation on the part of the mother." "Where does the pain go, then? How can it intensify joy?" "When a woman is raped, what does she feel? Of course she feels pain and revulsion. But when she gives in of her own free will, that same pain is transformed into different sensations. The same is true in regard to childbirth." "Does that mean Anastasia experienced a painless childbirth?" "Of course it was painless, and she chose a suitable day, a warm and sunny day." "What do you mean she chose? Childbirth happens quite unexpectedly." "Unexpectedly if the conception simply takes place by chance. A mother is always capable of delaying or accelerating her baby's appearance by a few days." "But weren't you aware of when the baby was due? Didn't you take steps to help her?" "We did feel something happening on that day. It was a splendid day. We walked over to her glade, saw the she-bear sitting at the edge of the glade, moaning because her feelings were hurt. She kept moaning and pounding her paw on the ground with all her might. Anastasia was lying on the same spot where her mother had given birth to her, and there was this little ball of life lying on her breast. The she-wolf was licking him. And why was the bear moaning? How had her feelings been hurt? Anastasia had called the wolf over instead of her. She could have gone to her on her own. They do not approach Anastasia without an invitation. Just think what would happen if they all came uninvited whenever they felt like it. I wonder how she's managing with the baby now. Why don't you go and see for yourself, if you're interested? She told me I shouldn't communicate with him until I purge myself of something. First of all, I have to go round to the holy places, but I don't have enough money for that. Don't go by what she said. She doesn't always make sense. You're the father, after all. You should do what you think best. You could buy a whole bunch of rompers and other baby clothes, packages of diapers, a little jacket, a rattle maybe, and demand that she dress the baby normally and not make him suffer. He's all naked out there in the forest. I've been wanting to do that ever since I heard about my son. I will do it. As for not making sense, I think you hit the nail right on the head. That's probably why I don't really understand my feelings toward her. First it was amazement, now some kind of feeling of respect has appeared, and something else besides which I can't grasp hold of. But not on the order of love for a woman. I still remember the kind of feelings I had when I loved a woman before. This here is something quite different. It's quite possible that she cannot be loved in the ordinary sense of the word. Something gets in the way. Maybe it's her illogicality, her failure to make complete sense all the time. Don't take Anastasia's illogicality, Vladimir, for stupidity. It's her seeming illogicality that is drawing forgotten laws out of the depths of the universe and possibly creating new laws. The forces of both light and darkness are occasionally astounded at her apparent illogicality. And then, all at once, the simple truth of being that everyone knows starts flaring up more brightly. Even we don't always comprehend our Anastasia. Even though she's our own granddaughter and great-granddaughter, she grew up under our very eyes. And since we don't always understand, we are not always able to be of significant help. And so she's often left alone with her own aspirations. Very much alone. Take you, for example. Here she's gone and met with you, opened up her whole self to you and to others, thanks to the book. We wanted to stop her. We wanted to stop her from loving. To us, her choice of you seemed incomprehensible, even absurd. I still don't understand her choice myself, I admitted. My readers, too, wonder, who are you? They keep asking. Why did Anastasia choose you? I can't give them an answer. I realize that according to all logic, she should be in the company of some kind of intellectually or spiritually minded person. He would no doubt be able to understand and love her. They could be more useful together. But me, I have to change my whole life. I have to deal with a whole lot of questions, which for other more educated people have long been clear and incomprehensible. Do you regret now how your life has changed? I don't know. I'm still trying to make sense of it all. As to why she picked me out in particular, I can't answer that. I look for an answer, but I can't find one. And how are you looking for an answer? I'm trying to understand things within myself, who I really am. Maybe there's something special there, eh? Could be there's something there. After all, they say like attracts like. Vladimir, did Anastasia talk to you about pride and self-conceit? Did she speak about the consequences of this sin? Yes, she said it was a mortal sin, leading people away from the truth. Well, she didn't pick you out, Vladimir. She didn't pick you out. She picked you up. She picked you up like a worn-out good-for-nothing. We didn't realize that ourselves at first. I hope you're not too offended. I don't entirely agree with you. I had a family, a wife, and a daughter, and my business wasn't doing too badly, so I may not have been anything special, but I wasn't at the bottom of the heap either. Not someone to pick up like a tramp or a useless piece of garbage. You haven't been in love with your wife for quite a while. You have your own life and interests. She has hers. It was only the daily routine that kept you together, or rather the inertia of past feelings, which have been getting weaker and weaker over time. Neither have you had anything to talk about with your daughter. She's not interested in your business dealings. That's something that seemed important only to you. It brought in a financial income, but today's income may well be nothing tomorrow, or a loss, or a bankruptcy even. And then you were ill. You practically killed your stomach. With that dissolute lifestyle of yours, there was no way you could climb out of your hole of disease. It was all over, and nothing was left. So what's it to you people? What am I to her? An experiment? Is she looking for some kind of fringe benefit? It's simply that she's fallen in love, Vladimir, genuinely, sincerely, just as with everything else she does. And she's happy that she hasn't taken anyone out of your world capable of bringing happiness to another woman. She has not placed herself in any privileged position. She's glad to be just like other women. So, it's just a whim of hers, eh? She wants a typical husband from our world, one who smokes, goes out carousing. Well, I must say, that's quite a self-sacrifice just for a whim. Her love is genuine, it's not a whim. She's not looking for any fringe benefit, even though she appeared illogical at first to the forces of both light and darkness, to us and to others. In reality, she clearly illuminated the whole concept and meaning of love. Not with words, doctrines, or moral teachings, but with actual achievements in the lives of people in your world, including your own personal life. The forces of light and the forces of the Creator speak through her love. And not only do they speak, they show clearly as never before. Look and see. See the power of a woman, the power of pure love. At the very last moment before death, it is capable of giving new life, capable of lifting up any man, rescuing him from the tenacious paws of darkness and carrying him into the brightness of infinity, capable of surrounding him with the space of love and giving him a new life, which is life eternal. Her love, Vladimir, will restore to you the love of your wife, the respect of your daughter. Thousands of women will look at you with fervent glances of love. You will have complete freedom of choice. And if, from all the varied manifestations of the external appearance of love, you succeed in catching sight of that special one, Anastasia will be very happy. In any case, you will be rich and famous. There will be no possibility of bankruptcy for you. The book you have written will circulate all over the world and bring you a return, and not just a monetary return. It will give you and others a power greater than the mere physical or material strength. I must say, I observed, the book is really starting to sell quite well. But I did write it myself, even though some people say Anastasia helped me in some way. What do you think? Is it just my book, or did she have a hand in writing it? You did everything a writer is supposed to do. You got the paper, your hand controlled the pen, and you described what happened. You put down all your deductions in your own language. You saw to the publication of the book. What you did was no different from a writer's usual course of action. So the book is mine alone? Anastasia didn't do anything? No, she did not. She did not manipulate the pen on the paper. But you talk as though she still facilitated its appearance in some way. If so, explain in more detail. What exactly did she do? To make it possible for you to write this book, Vladimir, Anastasia gave her life. Okay, now everything's got obscured again. How come? How is it possible for her, living in the forest, to give her life for some book? Who is she? She herself says, man. Other people call her an alien or a goddess. Now that all ends up in some serious confusion. I really want to straighten this out for myself. It's all very simple, Vladimir. Man is the only creature in the universe who can live on all planes of existence at once. In their earthly existence, most people see themselves only as an earthly materialized manifestation. But there are those who perceive other levels of being, levels invisible to the material senses. Calling Anastasia a goddess is not a sin against the truth. The main difference between man and all other forms of existence lies in man's ability to create the present and the future by his thoughts, inventing forms and images which are afterward materialized. The clarity, harmoniousness, pace of thinking, and mental purity of man as a creator is what determines the future. And in this sense, Anastasia is a goddess. For the pace at which she thinks, the clarity and purity of the images she formulates are such that she alone has proved capable of withstanding the whole dark mass of opposing forces. She alone. Only there is no way of telling how long she'll be able to hold out. She's still waiting, believing that people will realize what is happening and will help her, believing that they will cease producing darkness and hell. Who is producing darkness and hell? Prophets who believe in and talk about the end of the world. They themselves are producing mental visualizations of the end of the world. The whole mass of teachings foretelling the ultimate doom of mankind are hastening the day with their visualizations. There are a lot of them. A whole lot of them. And these people have no idea, while they seek salvation for themselves and search for the promised land, that a hell is being prepared specifically for them. But the people that are talking about the last judgment or a global catastrophe, they actually believe in it. They're sincerely praying for the salvation of their souls. They are motivated not by faith in the light, in the love that is God, but by fear. And this fearful scenario is something they are fashioning for themselves. Think, Vladimir. Try to imagine. Here we are, you and I, sitting on this bench. You see lots of people before your eyes. All at once, some of them start to go into fits of convulsion from terrible pain, as though they were sinners. All around us on the earth, millions of corpses are rotting, while you and I sit here untouched by it all and watch. It is as though we are sitting on a bench in paradise. But doesn't it wrench your heart to see all the horrifying images of what's going on? Wouldn't it be better to die or fall asleep the moment before witnessing such tragedy? What if all the righteous who are saved, I wondered aloud, are in the promised land, where there are no rotting corpses around, no frightful images? When you get news, even from the other side of the world, about the death of a loved one or a relative, don't you feel grief and sorrow in your heart? Anyone in a situation like that would surely be distressed. Then how can you imagine paradise for yourself, realizing that most of your fellow countrymen, your friends and relatives, have already perished, and others are dying in frightful torment? How hardened must a heart become, how deep a pit of gloom must it fall into to feel pleasure under such circumstances? Such souls are not needed in the kingdom of light, for they themselves are the creatures of darkness. But why do the great teachers of mankind, I queried, the ones who've put or are now putting various doctrines down on paper, talk about the end of the world, the last judgment? Who, then, are they? Where are they leading people? Why do they talk that way? It's difficult to define precisely what they're getting at. It's possible they will bring about change in people's conscious awareness simply because the crowds of people they draw find their ideas so attractive. Those who are alive today can effect such a change, I observed. But what about those who came before and left their teachings for us as a legacy? They might have indeed prepared the way for a change, in the hope that their followers would make the change happen and discover the truth. Perhaps they're waiting for the course of history to show the vast majority of mankind the hopelessness of their present path, and counting on ensuing events to help them turn their followers and believers to the light. If you people knew all this before, why did you sit there in the forest and remain silent all these years? Why didn't you try to explain it to somebody earlier? Anastasia said your people have been living this way of life for generations, over thousands of years, preserving the truth about man's pristine origins. In various corners of the earth, the grandfather replied, there are people who have preserved a way of life apart from the technocracy, making use of capacities which are inherent only in man. From time to time, they have made attempts to share their conscious awareness with others, and each time those who tried perished before they could say anything substantial. Even though they presented powerful thought forms and images, they were resisted by the vast majority of mankind. You mean to say they would trample on Anastasia and crush her? Anastasia has somehow managed to stand up to them, at least so far. Maybe it's because of her illogicality. The old fellow fell silent, thoughtfully tracing the point of his walking stick on the ground to form incomprehensible symbols. I sat there, deep in thought. Finally I asked him, then why did she keep repeating to me all the time, I am man, I am a woman? If she's really a goddess, as you say, in her earthly materialized sense of existence, she is simply man, a human being, a woman. And even though her lifestyle is somewhat unusual, she is still capable, just like anyone else, of experiencing feelings of joy and sorrow, loving and wanting to be loved. But all the abilities she has are inherent in man, in every man, that is, in man in his pristine state. The abilities she had, which seem so extraordinary, will no longer seem exceptional to you once you learn what your modern science has to say about them. And as to the other abilities she has, which are still not understood, rest assured an explanation will be found, and it will go to show that she is simply a man, a female of the human species. There is one phenomenon you will soon encounter, however, which you won't be able to understand, nor will your scientists be able to explain it. Even my father doesn't know exactly what kind of phenomenon it is. Your world calls such things anomalies. But I beg of you, Vladimir, don't identify this phenomena with Anastasia. It will appear right beside her, but it is not in her. Try to find the inner strength to see, to feel in her what is simply man. She tries to be like everyone else. For some reason, she feels it's important. She feels a need to prove that she is man. This is difficult for her, since in doing so she must still keep her principles intact. But then, don't we all have principles that are sacred to us? But what kind of phenomenon are you talking about? This thing you won't define, and which science can't explain? Chapter 27. The Anomaly. When we buried Anastasia's parents, she was still very young. Anastasia's grandfather began. She wasn't yet able to walk or talk. My father and I dug a hole in the ground with the animals' help. We placed branches at the bottom, put the bodies of Anastasia's parents in the hole, and covered them over with grass and earth. We stood there a while on the burial mound without saying a word. Little Anastasia sat a short distance away in the glade, watching a bug crawling along her arm. We thought it was just as well that she wasn't yet able to be fully aware of the misfortune that had befallen her. Then we quietly walked away. What do you mean you walked away? You just walked off and abandoned this poor, ignorant little girl to her own devices? We didn't abandon her. We left her in the same spot where her mother had given birth to her. You have a concept known as Shambhala, or motherland. The meaning of these words is becoming more and more abstract. Motherland, that is literally motherland, mother, in anticipation of their child's appearance in the world. Parents ought to create a space for him, an environment of kindness and love, and to give him a piece of the motherland, which, like a mother's womb, both preserves the body and caresses the soul. It imparts the wisdom of creation and assists in obtaining the truth. And what can a woman give her child who is born amidst stone walls? What kind of world has she made ready for him? Or has she given any thought at all to the world in which her child is to live? In that case, the world will do with him as it likes. It will strive to subject this little human being unto itself, making him a mere cog or a slave. And the mother will simply become an observer, as she has not made ready for her child any space of love. You see, Vladimir, nature, the nature surrounding Anastasia's mother, the creatures, large and small, treated her as they would treat any man who lived the way she did, as a friend, as a wise and good deity, one who had created around her a world of love. Anastasia's parents were happy and kind people. They very much loved one another, loved the earth, and the space around them responded to them with love. Little Anastasia was born into this space of love, and at once became its center. Many creatures will not touch a newborn. A mother cat may nurse a puppy, or a mother dog a kitten. Many wild animals are capable of nursing and taking care of human offspring, but these animals have become wild to people in your world. To Anastasia's mother and father, they played quite another role. The creatures treated them entirely differently. Anastasia's mother gave birth to her in the glade, and many creatures were witness to the birth. They saw how the woman they revered became a mother and bore another man, another human being. When they witnessed the birth, their feelings toward their human friend, their love for her, intertwined with their own parenting instincts, giving birth to a new, exalted manifestation of light. Everything, absolutely everything that's surrounding space, from the tiniest bug and blade of grass to the seemingly ferocious beast, was ready, unhesitatingly, to give its life for the sake of that little being. And there was nothing in that surrounding space of motherland, created and bestowed by its mother, that could possibly have threatened that being. Everything would look after and cherish this human being. To Anastasia, the little glade was literally a mother's womb. The glade is her living motherland, powerful and kind, and inextricably tied by a natural living thread to the whole universe, to the whole creation of the grand Creator. The little glade is her living motherland. It came from her mother and her father, and from the one and only, the original Father. We could never be substitute for it. That is why, after burying her parents, we walked away. 3 days later, while we were approaching the glade, we felt a tension in the air. We heard wolves howling. Then we saw. Little Anastasia was sitting quietly atop the burial mound. One of her cheeks was smeared with earth. We realized she had been sleeping on the mound. Tiny tears were streaming from her eyes and falling onto the ground. She was crying, noiselessly, with only an occasional sob, and she kept stroking and stroking the burial mound with her little hands. She wasn't able to talk, but she did say her first words on this mound. We heard them. At first she simply uttered syllables, "Mama," and then "Papa." She reached this several times. Then she added a syllable to each. "Mamuchka, Papuchka, Mamuchka, Papuchka. I am Anastasia. I now have you no more, eh? Only my grandpa's, eh?" My father was the first to realize it. Even as we were burying her parents, little Anastasia, sitting there in the glade and watching the bug, was fully aware of the whole depth of the misfortune that had befallen her. She used her willpower to refrain from showing her feelings. With her mother's milk, she had been imbued with the wisdom and strength of her pristine origins. Nursing mothers have that capacity, Vladimir, the capacity to pass along to their baby, together with mother's milk, the conscious awareness and wisdom of the ages, right back to their pristine origins. Anastasia's mother knew how to do this, and used this method to the full advantage, to the fullest possible advantage. Since Anastasia didn't want us to see her crying, we didn't go out into the glade and didn't approach the mound. But we couldn't tear ourselves from the spot, so we just stood there observing what was going on. Supporting herself on the burial mound, little Anastasia attempted to stand on her little feet. She didn't do it on the first try, but still she managed to stand up. She stood there, swaying back and forth, stretching her arms out a little to each side, and finally took her first timid step away from her parents' grave. Then a second step. Her little feet got mixed up in the grass, and her little body lost its balance and started to fall. But the fall, well, that was something quite unusual. At the moment she fell, a barely noticeable bluish glow came flooding over the glade and changed the earth's laws of gravity just on that particular spot. It touched us, too, with some kind of mellow languor. Anastasia's body didn't fall, but gradually and smoothly descended to the ground. Once she got up on her feet again, the bluish light disappeared and the normal gravitational field was restored. With careful and hesitating footsteps, Anastasia went over to a little branch lying on the glade and was able to pick it up. We realized she had started cleaning up the glade, as her mother had done many times. This wee little girl then carried the dry branch to the edge of the glade. But once again she lost her balance, began to fall, and dropped the branch. During her fall, once more the bluish glow sparked into life, changing the earth's gravitational field, and the branch flew over to the little pile of dry branches lying at the edge of the glade. Anastasia got up, looked around for the branch, but couldn't find it. Then, throwing up her little hands, with shaky steps, she slowly made her way over to another branch. No sooner had she started bending over to pick it up than the branch itself began rising from the ground. Anastasia got up, looked around for the branch, but couldn't find it. Then, throwing up her little hands with shaky steps, she slowly made her way over to another branch. No sooner had she started bending over to pick it up than the branch itself began rising from the ground, as though a breeze had blown it to the edge of the glade. But there wasn't enough of a wind to do this. Some invisible presence was carrying out the little Anastasia's desires. But she wanted to do everything herself, as her mama had done. And, no doubt in protest against this help from her invisible ally, she thrust her little hand into the air and waved it gently above her head. We looked up and saw it. Over the meadow we saw hanging a small spherical mass, pulsating and glowing with pale blue light. We could see a whole multitude of fiery discharges inside its transparent covering, giving the effect of multicolored lightning. Indeed, it was very similar to large ball lightning, but it was intelligent. We couldn't tell what it was made of and what kind of intelligence we were dealing with. We could feel some kind of unknown and unseen power in it. But there was no sense of fear in this power. On the contrary, it seemed to be radiating a pleasant, languid grace. We didn't feel like moving. We just felt like being. But what made you think it possessed untold power? I interrupted. My papa noticed that. Even though it was a bright, sunny day, the leaves on the trees and the petals on the flowers turned in its direction. In its bluish glow, there was more power than the sun's rays, and it could change the Earth's gravitational field at the moment Anastasia fell, just in the right place and just at the right time. The change was so precise that her body descended smoothly, but yet was not torn away from the earth. Anastasia spent a long time collecting branches. Sometimes she would crawl, at other times she would walk over the meadow with slow steps until she had cleared them all away. And the fiery sphere, still pulsating, hovering over the wee little one. But it no longer helped her pick up the branches. The powerful fiery sphere seemed to understand the gesture of her little hand and obeyed it. Expanding and dissolving in space, contracting and producing internal discharges like flashbulbs of some kind of energy from goodness knows where, the sphere would momentarily disappear and then reappear, as though it were somehow excited, and this excitement caused it to sweep through the space at incredible speed. The time came when Anastasia normally lay down to sleep. We never compel our children to sleep, rocking them back and forth until they become dizzy. At this time, Anastasia's mother would simply lie down herself in the usual spot and pretend to doze off, to show her child by example. Little Anastasia would crawl over to her, snuggle up against her warm body, and peacefully fall asleep. And this time, Anastasia went to the spot where she used to sleep during the day with her mother. She stood and looked at the place where she had always slept with her mama at this time. But now, there was no mama around. It was not clear just what she was thinking at the moment, only once again a tiny tear glistened in a sunbeam on Anastasia's face. And right away the bluish glow came pulsating across the field, flashing at irregular intervals. Anastasia raised her little head, saw the pulsating mass of light, sat down on the grass, and began staring at it continuously. It remained still under her gaze. For some time she just sat there staring like that. Then she held out both her little arms in its direction, as she was wont to do when summoning one of the creatures to her side. At that point, the fiery sphere sparked up in multitude of powerful lightning bolts, reaching out beyond its blue covering, and made a dash for her little arms like a fiery comet. Looking as though it had the ability to sweep away everything in its path, it took only a split second to reach Anastasia's face, start rotating, and with one of its lightning flashes wipe away a tiny tear glistening on her cheek. And at this point it extinguished all the discharges and became a pale blue, faintly glowing sphere in the arms of the little one sitting on the grass. For a time Anastasia sat there holding it, examining it and stroking it with her hands. Then she got up, lifted the blue sphere, and with careful steps carried it over and put it down on the place where she used to sleep with her mother. And again she caressed it gently. The sphere took up a position on the ground and pretended to doze off, just as Anastasia's mother had done. And the little girl lay down beside it. She fell asleep. She slept there on the grass, all curled up into a ball. The sphere took flight, disappearing into the heavenly heights, then spread itself low over the glade as though it were a blanket. Later, once more, contracting into small pulsating ball, it took up a position next to Anastasia, who was still sleeping on the grass, and began stroking her hair. It was a strange and unusual caressing. With the most delicate luminescent and flickering threads of lightning, it took each individual strand of hair, lifted it, and caressed it. On subsequent visits to Anastasia in her glade, we saw it again on several occasions. We realized that to Anastasia it was something quite natural, just like the sun or the moon, or the trees and animals around her. And she had conversations with it, just as a child did with everything else around her. But it was evident she made a distinction between it and the other things in her environment. The distinction wasn't too noticeable in terms of outward expression, but there was a definite impression that she treated it with just a little more respect than other things, and sometimes she would even play up to it. She never played up to anyone else, but for some reason she allowed herself to behave this way with the sphere. It reacted to her mood and even played along. The morning Anastasia turned 4, Grandfather continued, we were standing at the edge of the glade waiting for her to wake up. We wanted to quietly watch and see how she would delight in the new spring day that was unfolding. The sphere appeared just a moment before she woke up. It glistened faintly with its bluish glow, either spreading itself in a shower of light or dissolving over the whole space of the glade. And we beheld a natural living picture made by no human hand. It was charming and magnificent. The whole glade was transformed. The surrounding trees, the grass, even the bugs, the needles of the cedars began shining in a host of soft hues. Behind the squirrels, springing from the branch to branch, could be seen rainbow trails sparkling and dissolving. The grass was lit up in a soft green glow. An even more pronounced multicolored glow emanated from the multitude of bugs scurrying through the grass, forming an unusually vivid and beautiful carpet spreading its way across the glade, constantly morphing itself into new, intricate, and marvelous patterns. Upon awakening, Anastasia opened her eyes to behold an extraordinary living panorama full of enchantment. She jumped up and gazed all around. She smiled, as she always did in the morning, and everything around her responded to her smile with an even brighter glow and accelerated movement. Then Anastasia carefully knelt down and began meticulously examining the grass and the shining multicolored bugs scurrying about. When she lifted up her head, the slightly worried expression on her face betrayed a measure of concentration. She looked up, and even though nothing was visible up there, stretched her little arms to the sky. All at once the still air stirred, and in her hands appeared the bluish sphere. She held it up to her face, then put it down on the grass and tenderly stroked it. And we could hear their conversation. Anastasia was the only one who actually spoke, but we had the distinct impression that the sphere was understanding her and even silently responding. Anastasia spoke with it tenderly, with just a touch of sadness. "You are good. You are very good. You wanted to delight me with your beauty. Thank you. But change it back, please. Change it back the way it was before. And do not ever change it again." The blue sphere emitted another pulse, then lifted slightly off the ground, and lightning discharges flashed from within. But the glowing scene did not fade. Anastasia fixed her gaze upon it and spoke to it once again. "Every little beetle, bug, and ant has its mama. Everyone has a mama. All mamas love their children just the way they were born. It does not matter how many legs they have or what color they are. You have changed everything. How will the mamas recognize their children now? Please make everything as it was before." The sphere gave a faint flash, and everything in the glade was restored to the way it looked before. Once again it descended to Anastasia's feet. She stroked it and offered a thank you. She stared silently at the sphere for a while, and then she spoke to it again. Her words really impressed us. She told it, "Do not come to see me again. I like being with you. You are always trying to do only what is good for everyone, always trying to help. But do not come visit me. I know you have a very large glade of your own, but you think very fast, so fast that I cannot understand all at once. Only later shall I understand a bit. You move faster than everything else, much faster than the birds and the breeze. You do everything very fast and very well, and I know that is how you must do it to get everything done, to do good in your own very large glade. But when you are with me, it means you are not there. So, when you are with me, there is no one to do good in the other glade. Go away. You need to take care of the large glade." The blue sphere contracted into a little lump and took off way up high. It began sweeping through space, sparkling more brightly than usual, and once more plunged down like a fiery comet to Anastasia, who was still sitting in the same spot. It stayed still by her head for a while, then a multitude of tiny flickering rays reached out to Anastasia's long hair and stroked each strand individually right down to the tip. "What are you taking your time for?" Anastasia said quietly. "You should get going back to those who are waiting for you. I'll make everything all right here myself, and I will be happy to know that everything is all right in the large glade too. I shall be able to feel you, and I want you to think of me too, but just occasionally." The blue sphere began ascending, but not with its usual carefree bounce. It rose from Anastasia in fitful bursts, and finally disappeared into space. But it left something invisible all around. And each time when something happened that affected Anastasia negatively, the surrounding space would grow still, as though paralyzed. That is why you lost consciousness when you tried to touch her without her consent. She pacifies this phenomenon by waving her hands in the air whenever she can. Just as before, she wants to do everything all by herself. We asked our little Anastasia, what was that glowing thing that was hovering over the glade? What do you call it? She thought for a bit and answered briefly, I would call it good, Grandpakins. The oldster fell silent, but I still wanted to hear about how little Anastasia lived in the forest, and I asked him, what did she do after that? How did she live? The same way, the old fellow replied. She grew up just like anyone else. We suggested she help with the Dachniks. By the time she was 6, she was already able to see people at a distance, to discern their feelings and help them. She got involved with the Dachniks. Now she believes that the phenomenon of the Dachniks offers an easy transition to making sense of what constitutes our earthly existence. Here she's been continually shining that ray of hers for 20 years now. She's given warmth to plants on the small plots of land. She's treated people's illnesses. She's tried to explain to people without imposing on them how one should handle plants, and she's had terrific results. Then she started observing other aspects of human life, and destiny brought her together with you. And now she's come out of the idea of carrying people through the dark forces window of time. And what do you think? She'll be successful? I asked. Vladimir, Anastasia knows the power of thought inherent in man as a creator. Otherwise, she would never have let herself make such a statement. From now on, she will not deviate from this path. She will stick to it. She's a stubborn lass. It comes from her father. So she's taking concrete steps, I observed. She's trying to make her thought forms into reality. And here we are, just sitting and rationalizing about the spiritual, like kids wiping their noses. You know, there's quite a few people that still ask me, does Anastasia really exist, or did I just dream everything up myself? That's not a question people can actually ask. People touched by the book will feel her right away. She is in the book. Questions like that can only be asked by illusory people, not real people.